Ronald Young, welcome to Speak Up St. Louis.
Thank you, Quinton. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, just glad to have you, and congratulations on being a recipient of the Great Rivers Biennial.
Thank you.
And being a part of this exhibition, and just really being able to show the work that you're doing, not just in the art space, but for St. Louis as well, too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. If you want to start by sharing with folks, just a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm a retired educator, retired teacher. I taught for 33 years before I retired in 2013. I started out in St. Louis Public Schools. I ended up in Kirkwood. I retired from Kirkwood, which was a fabulous district. Had some fabulous kids. I'll get to that later. Once I retired, I traveled around freelance for a while, and then Ferguson happened in 14. Then in 16, I went back to school to Washington University at the Sam Fox School, and I got my master's in 18. So this body of work that you're looking at now basically came within the last 10 years, because prior to that, I was a painter. The bulk of my experience is painting, 2D work. And I like the work that I'm doing now because it's challenging and it's not as restrictive as some of the things that I had been doing before. But that's basically it.
For sure. And, first, thank you for the work that you did in education as well, too, because, St. Louis can't grow, cannot thrive without the foundational tools that you were sharing with students, whether they knew of the importance of it in the moment or not.
Well, what's interesting now is that I run into a lot of my former students who are, I'm not going to tell my age, but they're out here doing very successful. Shiraz Gorman, Sarah Paulson, and Jalen Solomon were all my former students from Kirkwood. And it is very inspiring as an educator to see your former students not only as adults, but really excelling. So that makes me feel good. It really is important to give back. You have to give back. Okay.
Yeah. And then so for, so starting out in education, what really drew you to that? Because I know for some folks, for some folks and families, there's a lineage of education where, my mom was a teacher, my dad was a principal. Did you have that, or was that just something to where you just felt like that's where you needed to be at that time?
Well, there were educators in my family, of course, and there were musicians in my family. And so it was always, I grew up in a family where it was expected of you. Let me rephrase that. I grew up in a community where it was expected of you to do something to make a contribution to society. Whether it was to be the custodian or the banker or the dentist or the domestic worker, whatever it was, you were expected to excel. So for me, it just seemed natural that I would evolve into being an educator. When I graduated from high school, I went to HBCU, I went to Clark Atlanta University. And interestingly enough, that was my exposure to black art. Because prior to that, I couldn't really name any black artists. I couldn't name any black artists who were international or anything like that. Matter of fact, the first black artist that I knew of was Ramir Bearden. And that was from me going to a HBCU, and then Hill Woodruff and all of these other artists were opened up to me. And then I also realized too that I could use my artwork to tell a story. I could use my artwork to talk about my people. I could use my artwork to share my feelings. I could use my artwork as a way of exposing to people maybe some things about black people or about our culture that they didn't know. So,
Yeah, and that's interesting. I shouldn't say interesting, but I think the importance of, and what I appreciate is the conversation around interconnectedness and community, but then also just the expansion of that as well too. So being able to understand the importance of the locality and the importance of what you're doing, and it doesn't matter the title that you have, but it matters that the contribution of how you're giving back and supporting one another. And that doesn't also, because that doesn't also necessarily mean that it has to be financially. Sometimes it's just the pure influence that you have on others. Sometimes it's the time and the treasure, talents, time, and treasure that you can be able to share. And so I'm curious, you talked about going down to Clark, Atlanta. Can you talk more about, because you talked about, being exposed overall just to other Black artists and like this larger context of art history that is not done well, to say the least. Like the canon, the canon is not full yet. We're working on that. But can you talk more about, I guess the importance of, because you said that you started off as a painter. Right. So were you primarily painting while you were down?
Oh yeah, I painted for, I painted for over 40 years. Okay, I painted for over 40 years. I was a painter. And it was Ferguson that changed that. Upon seeing all of the events that took place in Ferguson, I couldn't paint or create like I had been. It was like, that's not gonna express how I'm feeling. So I had to create a new language, a new visual language. Initially, I didn't know what that was. I was riding through the neighborhood, and the North Side in particular, and I'm looking at these buildings, these brick buildings are falling apart, or at least I thought they were. And I was like, why are these brick buildings falling apart? I mean, a brick building lasts 100 years. Right. And then the other thing is, sometimes it's not only what you see, but where you see it at. You only saw this on the North Side. You only saw it on the North Side. So that was alarming to me. It wasn't until I went back to school, so that was initially, I would say that was in 2011, 2013, around the time that I started seeing these buildings falling apart. When I went back to school in 16 was when I found out what they call them were the brick thieves. I'd never heard of them. I didn't know what they were talking about. Well, the brick thieves were individuals who were being paid to steal bricks. And the bricks that they were stealing were being bought by contractors and developers who were building homes, new homes in other cities that the climate was warmer. And St. Louis brick was prime brick. Prime brick. It was prime.
Right. This is a brick city right here. City. Production used to be huge.
A hustler could get, $200 for a pallet of 540 bricks to a pallet. So what was happening is there was this industry that was taking place, at the expense of the Black community. And so in addition to the buildings and the bricks, they were also taking all the fixtures and the woodwork and the molding and all of these things. And I didn't initially see that until I started down this road and I started, understanding what was going on. And at the same time, I was collecting these materials and objects. And that's what led me to be able to create this narrative. And what's interesting is that I was documenting it without even knowing it. I was literally taking pictures of buildings that are no longer there or have been destroyed or eventually were burnt down. And there's just one building in particular, and it's not far from here. It's located on the corner of Cook and Whittier. Okay. This building's been vacant for 50 years. I know that for a fact, because I lived down the street from it as a kid. Okay, when I graduated from high school in 1974, that building was vacant. It's still vacant now. And it sits in a prominent area. I mean, it's nothing else around it. If you ride through there, you'll notice it. And I posted it on my Facebook page, and a lot of people responded to it. And they were under the impression that I was talking about buying it. And that didn't enter my mind, but I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But the real issue is that this is just one of hundreds of buildings all over North St. Louis. Take your pick. They're all over North St. Louis. And we ride past them every day, and we've become so, what's the word? We're numb to it. We don't even pay attention to it anymore. So as a result of that, I started collecting these materials, and one of the first pieces I did when I was in school, I had collected this door, because doors were really interesting to me for some reason. And the metaphor behind the door is just that when you approach a door, somebody has to open the door and let you in. Okay, opportunity, and then you go through the door and you either close the door behind you or you leave the door open so others could come in. So that was kind of like the metaphor behind the door. But I found this door, and the day that I went down, because I was down there, like in this area, I was down around where the where the new defense mapping places. NGA, right.
Yeah.
And I was all in that area photographing stuff, and I found this door, and I asked these guys, I said, can I have this door? And they said, yeah, but you better take it today because they're getting ready to fence this area off and you won't be able to get to it. So I dragged, it was heavy too, man. I dragged it like 4 blocks. Oof. And, well, they were short blocks, thank God.
Okay.
they were north and south, not east and west.
Right.
So I dragged it about 4 blocks, and I hid it in a yard because I couldn't take it with me that day. It wouldn't fit in my vehicle. And I came back the next day. It was pouring down raining, dude. And I had my neighbor's pickup truck. And I wrestled with it and got it in the back of the truck, and I took it to my studio and got it in the studio, and it just sat there for a while. I really didn't know what to do with it, but that was the beginning of me, this journey. Mm-hmm. And to the young artists out there, I say, I'm gonna tell you, in order to get something you never had, you gotta do something you've never done. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're gonna keep getting the same results.
Right.
And at some point, the growth comes when you step outside of that comfort zone. You have got to step outside of that comfort zone. And that's what happened to me. I mean, I was just like, I went back to school. I really didn't know what I wanted. I knew I didn't want to do the same thing, but I didn't really know what the work was going to look like. I had no clear idea. And I described it like I stepped out on this ledge, and I said, wait a minute, I tried to change my mind. Doors already closed, couldn't go back. So I had to go down this path. And it was at times, it was almost like I was working blindfolded and just relying totally on my instinct. I had to really rely on my instinct to allow me to see where I was going with this. And then there were things that came about that were the burnt wood, because I was getting burnt wood. The buildings I was going in, they were burnt. The bricks were burnt because
right.
the buildings were burnt. As a matter of fact, one of the techniques that the brick thieves would use is they would set the buildings on fire. They weren't trying to burn them down. They just wanted for the fire department to come and hose them down. And once the fire department came and hosed it down, it loosened up the mortar. It made it a lot easier for them
to pull
to
bricks
take
out.
the bricks. So we take the bricks out. And then they would take other people would come and help themselves to the molding. I've seen woodwork that is fabulous in houses that have been abandoned, that's just sitting there. Stained glass, decorative molding, just all kinds of fabulous work. People just walk right. Well, the people who understand take
right.
it. Those of us who
don't
walk
know.
past it every day, we just kind of.
It's just another. It's just passing by.
It's just something passing by. So I thought that this is what I need to do. So anyway, the burnt wood, the bricks, the nails. The nails came about as a result of my studying sculpture, and particularly in Kensei and Kondo, which is the sculpture, the Kondonese sculpture that you see with the nails in it, and the power sculpture.
Okay.
And that came about as a result of that. But what's interesting about the nails is initially I would buy nails. I bought nails, I bought what they call it, the square nails, And then I started realizing that when I was going to these places, there were nails already there. Yeah, just walking
You ain't got to go to Home Depot.
You ain't got to go to Home Depot. So I started picking up this stuff. And anyway, as time went on, there were certain objects I was drawn to, old tools, things that were rusty, things that had character. But I also began to understand and create a narrative behind this.
Right.
Because traditionally in our communities, we had to use and reuse things.
And that's what I was going to ask you too is, what is this process of repurposing and revisioning? Because, especially in the city, there's objects everywhere.
Right.
And so I guess maybe this is two questions. Maybe the first part is when you are now first, do you consider a part of this process, a part of your process, scavenging, or is there another word?
Scavenging.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Diving.
You know, I ain't want to call you no scavenging. You be like, hold on, brother, that ain't what I do. You know, you might have another, term for it. So when you so maybe that's the first question is when you are scavenging and looking for these pieces, like what is it that maybe draws you to it? Because you kind of touched upon it some in regards to character. But then the other part too is this conversation around repurposing and revisioning. And I think that's really interesting, especially for an individual that's lived in North St. Louis City and is really taking charge and ownership of this is how I'm going to use the products and the things that are in my environment, rather than somebody because it's a different conversation around when you're doing it than maybe somebody that's coming in that doesn't have the context and history saying, oh, I'm going to use these objects and it doesn't have this, it's not charged in the same way.
Okay. Oh boy, I'm trying to answer. Well, it's best I can remember. The first question was about the materials, right?
Yeah, like what stands out? Like what makes a material stand out to you?
Well, initially it was all instinct. It was just instinct. And I tell young artists too, and young people in particular, trust your instinct. Your instinct is that's what's gotten you to this far in your life. Trust your instinct. And it was just instinctually that I would see certain things and I'd be like, that's interesting. This, even if I didn't know what I was going to do with it, I would take it back to my studio. Eventually I would find a purpose for it. What was the second question?
Yeah, the second part was just more so of like this process of maybe how you're thinking about repurposing and maybe it's not revisioning. Maybe it's more so reimagining how these objects are being used because it had its original purpose.
Right.
And then it was left. Right. And then the weather and everything else did something to it that changed its context again. And then now here you are picking it up, put some of these objects 50 plus years in the waiting for you.
Well, one of the great things about the way I work now is that, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. There's no one way of doing it. I can take whatever approach I want to. In some cases, like with the door, I had a very specific thing in mind. I knew what I wanted with this door. I knew that I wanted the ropes. I knew it was very specific. In other cases, it's not as specific. The material and the object kinds of navigates the way it wants to be manipulated or worked with. One of the reasons that, again, about my background, even though I was a painter, I'd always worked with my hands, so I had very good shop skills. I had very good fabrication skills. But there were things that I wanted to do that I couldn't do. I wanted to work. Welding has always been interesting to me. I mean, fire, burning stuff. I mean, I'm there. So, but I couldn't weld. Like, I had to start with something. So that's why I went out and found objects and I welded them together, and that's what kind of bridged that gap because I was impatient. I don't have time to, to master this. I got to do it and get it going. So the challenge for me was being able to figure out how to create a body of work. Plus, I'm in school too now. Wash, you ain't sitting around waiting for you to figure it out. You better come on with something now. So, it was interesting how everything just kind of came together, and now I'm very comfortable with the work that I'm doing. I know exactly about my materials. I understand I just understand my process better. Right. Now that doesn't mean that I'm settling for this. I have a better understanding of what I'm doing. Right. So, yeah.
And that's interesting to me, this comfortability with relationship to objects that you've never seen yet. Right. You don't know where they're at. Right. Like, just so the comfortability there's a lot of this comfortability, I think, one, with your process of kind of this unknown variable, because, I guess in my mind, it's like, all right, you have this idea of what you want to make, but if the object's not there, now you have to repurpose, reimagine what this is going to be.
Well, that was the challenge. The way I used to work, and you can go online, you can see some of my old stuff. It was a real tight style. I was a painter. I also did collage and mixed media collage, and I did found objects. I did murals. I did billboards back in the 80s. Was it the 80s or the 90s? I think it was the 90s. I did billboards. So I did murals, large format. So my background was primarily as a painter. I was trained as a painter. But in this case, it was the challenge to me was taking a painting is an illusion. That's all it is, an illusion. I don't care how good or bad it is an illusion. Somebody painted something and made you believe that this is an object that exists in space. But in reality, it's just a two-dimensional flat plane in front of you that somebody painted. Sculpting, totally different thing. Sculpting is actually taking the physicality of whatever material that you're using and creating this form in 3D space. I think it was Michelangelo that compared sculpting to the act of creation like God, because he would take marble and just make it into a masterpiece, But the point being is that I had to learn how to think like a sculptor. I had been thinking like a 2D artist for many, many years, and I knew how to create things in 3D, but thinking like a sculptor took a while. And so initially, I was kind of like, the security of the wall was great for me. And the two pieces that are on the wall downstairs, okay, those are two pieces that I did in school. And I had never shown them. They had never been shown. And so when the curators and the museum people came out to the house to do the studio visit, they saw the pieces and they were like, "We want those." And I was like, "Really?" Because the thought of it never occurred to me to have those pieces shown. But I'm glad that they selected them, because it shows the transition that I had to go through from making something that still was three-dimensional, but it was stuck on the wall. So I only had to worry about this side of it. I only had to worry about the front,
Right.
As opposed to learning how to think in the round. And if that makes any sense, it was really, it took a while for me to get that. I can remember an early review that I got, and the critic said that my work was great. He said some things about it, but then he said I forgot his exact words, but basically he was saying that I was only looking at it from one angle as opposed to in the round. And he was absolutely correct, because I was, used to being a painter.
And so, thinking about working in the round, I'm thinking about this piece that's more centered in the work, where it's got the, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, has the more horse-like figure.
That's the gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper, yes. That's at least in my mind, when you're talking about some of the early work, that seems like that's more of that. You're getting close. You're getting much closer to the comfortability of working in the round, because for me that was like, there's a lot going on here, and not in a negative way, but more so in the sense of, when I saw Gatekeeper, to me it seemed like a procession, and so I'm curious on what were your thoughts around Gatekeeper, and just breaking that down for the audience, like that may not see the work, and what that means to you.
Well, the Gatekeeper was a piece that everybody talks about that looks like a horse, or it looks like some type of animal, whatever it is. It's a mythical character, a mythical character that I created from my experience from traveling specifically to South Africa, because I went to South Africa with a group, and we went to one of the African safaris, and this was just my interpretation of what I saw when I was there. Okay. That piece came, and I worked on that piece at the height of COVID. It was like I was confined to my house, so I couldn't go anywhere.
Right, going insane.
So I'm like, let me take my frustrations out on this piece. The centerpiece that it's in, that dirt area, that's called a yard show. And a yard show is based on the African diaspora tradition of having a space within our environment, like right outside of the house. And better yet, have you ever rode past these houses and they have all this stuff in the yard? They have wheels and
Yeah.
all kind of crap, and you're like, what? That's a yard show.
Some folks,
That's a yard show.
Some folks, that's your neighbor.
Some people go way overboard. Okay?
What you call holiday come, holiday come. They got all the blow up.
Yep. Well, that's taking it in another direction, but.
Right. But, hey, for the folks listening, don't release the tension from your face. You know that's either you or your neighbor. Let it go.
But anyway, the yard show, they had certain objects in the yard show and it was symbolic of the community. You know, like they had wagon wheels and shiny objects and farm tools and different artifacts that were, you know, like Uncle Joe passed on, and we got all these tools. You know, put them out in the yard. You know, Big Mama got these pots and pans, and you know, and you just can't get the pots and pans. You have to earn that. Okay. Well, that whole thing is in the yard show. So all of those tools were tools that I grew up being around, seeing my grandfather and men in the neighborhood work with. Some of them I don't even know the name of. They just resonated and with me. And but yeah, that's the yard show. And for me, it's especially important that I introduce those types of things to my people, because a lot of times we see stuff and we don't really understand the message behind it or the history behind it. Just like I was seeing those buildings falling apart. I didn't know what was going on until I finally was told by someone, oh, those are brick thieves and this is what they're doing. You know, so it's really important that I share that knowledge with people so they can at least make their own decision.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, no, I think that, and thank you for sharing that too, just because, you know, when I was looking at the works, for me, you know, when I was seeing the shovel or the rake and all these things, that it did have that, you know, that human aspect to them. And then I think just that connection to, you know, not only the connection between labor and the human life too. I think there's a real connection to it, because you know, that is a part of our existence is this level of labor. But I think what is interesting too is that it's not just this aspect of labor that you're showing. There's this very much care and intentionality to the yard show that is happening, because you're putting these things on view for others to see the aspects of not only just your experience, but a family experience, a communal experience. And it peeks into that. And so being able to share that and hearing more about that context, I think really adds another layer that I didn't even expect.
Okay, so back at one point I was doing shows, and some family members came up to me and they were like, you know, well, aren't you scared people gonna take the work? I'm like, folks don't care about this stuff. They do not care about it. They'll walk right past it. If I put an iPhone next to my sculpture, they're going to take the iPhone. They don't care about the sculpture.
Because they've been walking past it forever.
Because they've been walking past it forever. And so part of the challenge for me was when one of the first shows I did, I didn't want to tell, I did very little explaining of the work. Because I wanted people to come to their own conclusions. And what I eventually found out is, okay, I got to explain this to folks. You know, I had to do some explaining, and I got better at explaining it too as time went on. But I'm glad that I did it like that, because sometimes people have to figure things out on their own. Everything, you know, my people, when we think of art, we have a certain image in mind. It has to look this way. You know, it's got to have some people dancing. It's got to have some colors, and if it's not that, then it's what is it? You know, and I'm of the opinion that it's just like people who can't listen to music unless they have lyrics. You know, like, can't you just listen to the song and hear it and feel the expression in it and come to your own conclusions? Well, that's how I feel about a lot of art, especially when you start talking about things that are non-realistic, you know, very abstract, you know, and that require you to come with some of your own interpretations of what it is. Everything is not going to be, or shouldn't be, concrete.
Right.
You know, some things you do have to figure out on your own.
And it challenges you to put your own experience in the context as well, too.
Right.
One thing that I wanted to go back to is that when you talked about, you know, somebody asking, are you worried somebody will take the work?
Right.
And your response is, you know, essentially, why would they? They pass it by all the time. Do you feel like within your work, because when I hear that, I hear a level of, you know, of this conversation around just like invisibility. And so I'm curious, like, are you maybe not necessarily wrestling with it, but more so having conversations around that? Because when I think about this invisibility and this connection to North St. Louis and this connection to one where we know that there are great communities, champions of these communities that have been holding it down for generations, but we also know at the same time, you know, the right type of funding and resources have not been implemented for generations as well too. And so I'm curious on like, does invisibility come up in your conversations around the work, whether it's just, you know, with yourself and your practice?
Initially, now not as much. Now not as much, but initially, yeah, it was finished. You know, like most people, you finish grad school or you finish, you know, you graduate and you're like, you know, even though I'm older, I'm like, okay, I got this portfolio. I'm gonna get out here and see what happens. And initially, everything was just like, you know, I couldn't get any traction. The only thing that bothered me about that was I just knew I hadn't reached my audience yet. And so it didn't deter me, well, I take that back. Some things did deter me. When you're applying for all this stuff and you're paying these
application fees.
Paying these application fees. And if you did that about 4 or 5 times, 25, 50.
I think that would frustrate anybody.
You'd be like, okay, y'all just taking my money. And the other thing that really is tell me what I did. Give me some kind of feedback. Tell me they don't do that. They just take your money. When you get the letter, you get the email, the text or whatever, if it says anything other than congratulations, you didn't get it. If it starts off, well, we had many people, you know. And so initially, no is part of the process. I'm rambling here, but no is part of the process. No is part of the process. Get used to it. I've heard no way more than I've heard yes. I applied for Great Rivers 3 times. This was my 3rd time applying for Great Rivers. Okay.
For folks that don't know, it's biennial. That's 6 plus years in the making, right there.
And if I'm not mistaken, I'll put it out to two. Basil, this was his 3rd time applying too. And Saj, I think this was her 2nd or 3rd time applying. So what I've learned from this is that there are going to be things that you're going to have to do it several times.
Yeah.
You know, but what I found out through my own efforts was how to get feedback so I could know what either I'm doing right or what I'm doing wrong, what areas I need to improve in. And that comes in with going to these different workshops that RAC has, going through the workshop that, the one that really is really good is
Real quick,
MAPS.
Folks that don't know RAC, Regional Art Commission.
Yep, and the MAPS, which is Missouri Arts something. Can't remember the acronym.
I can't remember that one either.
Yeah, but they have a mock panel review. I suggest to every artist take time to go to that. Take time to go to it. And what it does is people can submit their proposals. The panel of people will review it. You don't get to say anything. You just listen. It is a great learning experience because they go through this entire rubric of how many categories. They got like 10 specific things that they look for. And you get to learn. You say, oh, okay, I'm putting all this stuff in here that, you find out what you really need versus what you don't need. Another thing for all young artists, okay, get your work professionally photographed. I know that you've heard that zillions of times. I know that I don't have them. Get your work professionally photographed.
See, we didn't put a mic in front of Ron. Now that educator coming out of him, he letting y'all know.
And I have to admit, I didn't do that for a long time. I did my own stuff, but you have to get your work professionally photographed. And the reason is because when you're submitting your work to these panels, I heard this in this room when I came for the 2nd time or whatever it was for the applying for Great Rivers. They said that among the things that they do, they show you get to submit 5 pieces, like slides. They said that stuff stays up in front of 5 seconds at best. Click, 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 click. That's it. And I was like, wow, you think that they're going to sit there and study your work? So you have to go for impact, and it has to be immediate, and you can't take shortcuts because you don't have the money to do, find a photographer. Do something in exchange for that photographer. It makes a big difference. It really does. Don't be afraid to go to these workshops, and find out information, because that's what's going to prepare you and take you to the next level. One last thing while I'm rambling and stuff.
No, you're fine.
Okay. It's called competition. It's called competition. People get mad or get upset, but what you don't realize is that the higher you go up the pyramid, there's fewer and fewer spaces left. Okay, so when you start applying for things like Great Rivers, or you start applying for things like Harlem Studio Museum of Harlem, which I have applied for too. Okay, you're going up that ladder.
Everybody's just as good as you are.
Everybody's just as good about. So don't get mad. I mean, really, you have to. Don't take it personal. Just don't take it personal. Learn from the experience. And do the things that you need to do. Surround yourself with the people that can help you and move you forward. And that's probably the best advice that not only I can give you, but that I practice myself, which is, you have to be resilient. You have to be determined. You have to be, you got to build a force field around yourself to protect yourself, because as artists, you want your work to be appreciated, you want your work to be loved, but that's not going to be the case.
Right.
So you have to protect yourself as an artist, as an individual, and come to understand that stuff is not really personal, but make sure that you have put your best foot forward. So yeah.
Resilience. I mean, there's a level of resilience it takes to go from paint into sculpture.
Yeah.
There's a level of resilience to apply 3 times.
Wow.
So just, you telling that, your story is an embodiment of that.
Well, I was just one of those people that, in the old days, they said you were hard-headed. You are hard-headed. But I was just one of those people that if I felt like I could do something, you're not going to stop me. You're not going to stop me.
Because the community told you could.
Yeah, I grew up in Laclede Town. I was first generation Laclede Town. I grew up in Laclede Town from first generation. Laclede Town was built in 1965.
Yep.
I grew up in Laclede Town. We moved there in 1967, and we stayed there all the way up to 75.
Real quick, Ron, for the folks that don't know, tell folks where Laclede Town was.
Okay, Laclede Town is the area located right across the street from Harris Stowe College on Laclede. And the original Laclede Town was housed between Compton, Ewing, Laclede, and Olive. And there's some real interesting history about that area, because that was Mill Creek. Get to that later.
Yep.
But,
that's what I wanted to get to, because folks don't know that.
But I had, I had people like Shirley LaFleur and just many people in the community that you knew that you could look up to, that you could emulate, and that you could go to. Percy Green, it goes on and on and on.
Some of St. Louis' best and brightest are from Laclede Town and Mill Creek.
And so how could I come out of this community and not do something, not make a contribution, not, like I said, it was expected of you. It didn't make no difference if you worked at the bakery or if you was the bank president. It was expected of you to excel. It was expected of you to do the best job that you can do. But that foundation is there, and it never left me. It just never left me. But growing up in Laclede Town, I used to hear Mill Creek, Laclede Town built on the ashes of Mill Creek. And, I didn't know anything about Mill Creek growing up. Other than I heard the word.
Right.
I didn't really start finding out about Mill Creek until I was an adult. I would say in the last maybe 20 years, I found out more about Mill Creek than I ever knew growing up. Living in Laclede Town, the area where Mill Creek was originally from. I mean, and then I have an uncle. Oh boy, don't get him started. But he would tell me about Mill Creek, and what I found out is that the streets were still the same. The street names, Laclede, Lawton, Pine, all of those streets, Garrison, Locust, all of those streets were still the same streets.
Right. And for folks that also don't know, Laclede Town and Mill Creek, these are all like these are black communities, black neighborhoods.
Yep. Well, Laclede Town was multi-ethnic.
Okay, so Mill Creek was probably
Mill Creek was black,
predominantly black.
But Laclede Town was multi-ethnic,
okay.
And but it was. I am the person I am today because of that, because of Laclede Town,
Neighborhoods matter so much.
Yeah, and so
community matters.
Community matters. It really does. It matters. So when I went away to college and went to a HBCU and began to find out all the stuff about my people that I did not know.
No.
I mean, it was so much. It was a cultural awakening for me, and to go into the Trevor Arnett Library and to see this mural that Hale Woodruff had painted that I knew nothing about. Hale Woodruff started the art program at the Atlanta University Center. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. So I think that it's important that I keep it in context of all the things that I've learned over the years that are now in this body of work. There's so much there. It's just, I could talk for another 3 hours,
right.
But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the history of, not only who you are, but the people that helped you get to this space, the people that nurtured you, and like all of that is coming through. Like, who would have thought that one brick or one piece of rope or that burnt piece of wood or those many nails had that much story and context in them? Well,
it's okay. So most of I can tell you the areas that I mostly frequent: the Ville, Old North, Benton Park, Hyde Park. Those are just the four areas that I can name off the top of my head. The Ville, especially because I went to Sumner. And there was one house in particular. There's a video that I made, and I'm scavenging. I'm going through these, just showing how I work or how I collect my materials. That house is 3 blocks from Sumner in its current state. And what I've got a word I've called it. I began to call those areas. They're in a state of perpetual disintegration. It's just, I can ride through there, and I can see a building that's burnt up, and I'll come back maybe 2 weeks later, and it was in there. When I started collecting bricks, and people were like, well, where do I go to collect my bricks? I said, you can go all over the north side and find bricks.
So what makes it perpetual is not only that the house burned down, but the house is still burned down.
The house is still burnt down.
And it hasn't changed. Yep. 2 weeks turns to 2 months, turns 2 years.
2 years. There's just one place in particular, and I really want to try to meet the people who this home belonged to. Okay, so there were 3 houses, and one house caught on fire. And the two adjacent, the matter of fact, the house that originally caught on fire burnt down, and the 2 adjacent houses caught on fire as well. Okay, one of the houses is the people were able to, I guess they're still living there. The other house, the people moved out. Okay, I can tell you when it happened. It was around Christmas, because the Christmas decorations are still there. They're still in the hallway. Everything is still there. It's like a frozen moment in time. But then, this is where you have to have a distinguishing eye. You should see the woodwork in this house. It is immaculate. The house burned down, but the wood is still there.
That's interesting. And That's interesting. Those two things that are kind of coming into play. There's the artistic side and the, just the visual prowess that's happening just from your studies and just years of doing the work. But then there's the scavenger part as well too, and the community orientedness to be able to understand the context for what you're looking at as well too. And they just blend together. And now, you're creating, I can imagine, you going to see these things. Now you're creating stories on top of stories of what happened here, why, when, who used to live here. Like, what is the story that is, like you said, being a perpetual disintegration?
It's in a perpetual state of disintegration. And what I would like to see is a effort by people to, many of these places can be fixed. Like I said, there are hundreds of homes, vacant properties all over North St. Louis. Take your pick. You could probably go buy a whole block, okay? And to take that same effort that we put into all the other stuff that we do as a people, and put that into certain areas, to revitalize them and bring them back. And you said something earlier that I subscribe to. Everything isn't always about money, it's about time. Mm-hmm. Everything isn't always about money, it's about time. You can find people to donate money to do stuff. But if you don't have, but if you don't have the people to go in and actually do the work,
there's a lot of folks that'll donate money, but when you ask them, hey, can you scrub these floors and can you help us rebuild this wall?
So with me, it's finding the time to make sure that the work is done, and as an educator, one of my jobs is to pass that knowledge on. I just learned the term Baba. Baba is, it means a respected elder. And I take that term on because at this point, how would I look trying to paint and do work like the young artists that are running around, fabulous work with the murals, what? I mean, really? So it only stands that as you get older, whatever it is you're doing, you become less concerned about fitting in and
trends
and trends, and that's when you make your greatest discoveries and progress. I like a lot of the work that I see. I do. I like a lot of the work that I see. And I think that as time goes on, a lot of these artists are going to evolve and push past that. One thing I will warn about, okay? We all know Basquiat. We all know what Basquiat's work looked like. I don't care how you twist it, turn it around, put different colors in it,
it's on every shirt. It's been on every poster.
We recognize Basquiat. Now, I have to say this. When I was creating art, I emulated Vermeer. That was the person whose my work was most influenced by. But I also knew too that was what I was doing. And so you have to kind of, you learn from it. I think it was Picasso that say that good artists borrow, great artists steal. Let me tell you what that simply means, okay? If you just go and copy, Basquiat's work, you're copying it. Nothing wrong with that. But when you understand the essence of what made him the person that he is, Basquiat spoke 6 different languages, okay? When you understand the essence of who he is, he started out as a graffiti artist.
His technique,
he didn't care about, he went out and found stuff in the street and painted it. That's the essence of him. Once you understand the essence of what that person is, then you can go on and do, you find, you steal what you want from them, and then you create your own original. Yeah.
The essence of an artist, the technique, the time, where they what were they reading? What were they watching?
What were they reading? What were they watching?
Who were they studying?
Who were they studying? And that is when you start making these. Your work really starts evolving, and it takes time. It really does. It takes time. The work that I'm doing now, it took me being in school to first be in an environment that would allow me to create this body of work. You know, I doubt very seriously if I would have did this on my own. The atmosphere of being back in school, the challenge and all that stuff.
Being around other creatives, having the space, the tools, the resources, the library collection.
Right. So, so to my young artists, I say, surround yourself with other creatives. Everybody doesn't have to look like you or have the same type of style as you. Okay. What? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Talking over there. Okay. Let me start my thought over again. Okay. The real creativity begins when you start pushing the envelope. It's okay to be where you are now, but as time goes on, your work is going to evolve and you're going to change. And don't be afraid of trying new stuff. When you start feeling that's turning in your stomach and you start looking at it and saying, I don't know about this, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. You know, that's how you do. That's when you start moving into that area of finding out exactly what it is that you are trying to say, or what it is that you're trying to get people to believe. Initially, when I was first starting to create this work, I was doing stuff so fast I didn't have any titles. I had no titles. And then when it came time to think of titles, I couldn't think of anything. I was like, damn, what? And then what I started realizing is that if I just start writing stuff down, anytime a title or something came to me,
you'll have a collection.
I just wrote it down. Eventually, I have a book of names. So I have all of these titles, and all I have to do is you can use that too, young artist. You can use that. No, hey, just know I'm gonna be stealing that one.
You know,
and what it did was it allowed me to, when I finished the work, or even halfway through, I said, I already know what I'm gonna call this because I have a title prepared. And the titles say a lot about me and my state of mind, or how I might feel, or there's one piece down there in particular, Everything Falls Apart. And when I created that piece, this was like, it was so much craziness going on. You know, COVID, we had, you know, the January 6th. I mean, it was just like madness. Everywhere I looked, it was madness. And so this piece really gave me a chance to express that. But what it really did was it challenged me to go somewhere with my sculpting that I had never been. This piece I was able to do some things with this piece. It almost looks like a small piece of architecture. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what I used to watch and I got the ideas from. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
I used to watch Game of Thrones and I watched the setting. I said, I like how this stuff looks. So I had this thing in mind. But basically, with all of the titles, usually it's going to say something about either our society or how I feel about, you know, what's going on, or just getting people to just think. You know, do I have fun when I'm doing the work? Yeah, I have a great time. You know, I mean, I have fun when I'm doing it, but it's serious. I do take it serious. So
yeah, it's your practice. It's the thing that you're putting your time towards. Right. So yeah, it should be fun at the same time. Like it's this play, like it's playful. It's this experience, but at the same time, it's like no, this is my craft. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Ron, just for sharing, I guess, this interconnected journey and experience that you had. Not just because what you've shared it's like the exhibition is just a moment in time of showing this long practice and journey and experience that you're not only sharing with the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis and the folks that are coming, but also just the practice and education that you are sharing with the St. Louis community. And we've all, I would say, you know, I'll say it for your students, for myself, for folks that are experiencing your work, for the community members that know you just as Ron, not as Ron the educator, or Ron the artist. We really appreciate, what you're doing and how you are adding so much life and essence and just the visual practice that you're adding to the culture.
Thank you.
So just wanted to make sure I said that. And, as we're wrapping up, I want to ask you we have a final 2-part question that we ask all of our guests.
Right.
The first part is what do you love most about St. Louis? And then the second part is, what do you most want to see change?
Wow.
I know it seems easy, but it's also heavy as well.
Okay.
He got it. He ready to roll.
I'll start first with what I would most like to see change.
Okay.
Stop looking outside of the city for stuff. It's all here.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when we say, we got to go here, we got to go. No, you don't. It's all here. It's okay to have the influence, but what works in New York, what works in Chicago, what works in Atlanta, what works in Miami, it's not gonna work here. It's a whole different thing. You take the elements from that, which is fine, but then you come here and you create your own thing. That's why I love the flood wall. I love the flood wall. I love it. That's a truly St. Louis thing. And I'll tell people out there like, flood wall, always, I'll be like, God, dog, do y'all go anywhere other than,
Central
to the
West
mall?
End and Delmar.
God, and what was the first question was?
What do you love most about St. Louis?
You can do it here. You can do it here. If you got the vision and you have the determination, you can do it here. You can do it here. And that doesn't mean that you can't go someplace else and get recognition, but you can do it here.
I mean, you live in proof of that.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it right here.
Your materials come from here? Your story come from here?
My stuff came from right around the corner. Right around the corner.
Hey, Ron said, he said his experience right around the way.
Right around the corner. I drag stuff from one end of the block to the 4 blocks in the rain and all of that. I remember, let me just add this in here. I remember at one point, the show that I did at the Kransberg, I had photographs of the areas that I had been collecting pieces from, and somebody has said something about the quality of the photographs. They weren't professional quality or something to that nature. And I responded, I said, well, I'm in the hood, I'm by myself, I got a cell phone, I'm moving. I don't have time to have a professional photographer to come and follow me around. So all of the pictures that you were seeing, or the pictures that you've seen, were in the moment. But what it also did, it provided me with documentation. Because I could go back and look at that picture and look at the locator, and I could find out where I was, and I could go exactly back to that specific location. So I think that hopefully the stuff that I've said, will resonate with people. But the best part about being here right now is you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it. You go to Atlanta right now, it's 6 million people in Atlanta, okay? My friends are saying do not move to Atlanta, okay? I'm telling you. I'm down there all the time. I'm telling you right now.
They say come visit.
Come visit, do not move there, okay? I ain't got to tell you about L.A., okay? Same thing. You can go visit. It's saturated. It's saturated, That doesn't mean you can't go there and spend time there and enjoy the culture, but you can get a lot more done here for a lot less than you can in those markets that I just named. You talking about going to LA, good luck. You talking about going to New York, good luck. Okay. Talking about going to Atlanta, it's doable, but once again, you can do it here.
Build your community here.
Build your community here.
Yep. Build your practice here, because that's where your experience is.
Yep, that's where your experience is, right here. So, yeah.
Well, Ron, thank you so much again for sharing your time, the talents that you have, obviously, and just the education that you have just grown, not just in a way of just, this is for me, but the education of, no, this is what I need to put you all on to.
You got to share. You got to share. If you're selfish, stay away from me. Selfish people can't.
You're keeping the door open, and that's what we appreciate.
When you get in the room, bring others with you.
Yeah.
When you see opportunities, You know, make sure that other people are aware of those kinds of things and stuff. Everything ain't always about money.
Yeah, it goes back to that the example you gave with the door, like leaving the door open.
Leaving the door open.
Because you know, even if you, because I was thinking about it earlier, because if you don't leave the door open, even if it's not locked, how are folk going to know that they can come in?
They won't know. They won't know. And don't be afraid. Golly, when I went to Wash U, and there were people saying, "You going to Wash U?" I'm like, "Yeah, what?" You know, they were like, "Well, ain't you?" No.
What you scared for?
What you scared for? Yes or no. That's it. Yes or no. Okay. And what you can't get from one place, you go to the next place. But here's the thing that you have to remember. Okay. This is not a goal. This is not a goal.
That's a goal.
This is your goal. To excel, to get up here. This is, if it's down here,
a goal has to stretch you.
It has to stretch you. You should have some type of turning in your stomach, like, "Ooh, man, this is," but you can't let the fear of that. My greatest fear in going back to school was my age. My age. I knew I was older, much older than, matter of fact, I had teachers that were my age, you know. So my greatest fear, the thing I struggled with most was my age. But I'm so glad that my daughter, because she was in grad school at the same time. She graduated from she's in Chicago. She went to, God, I can't think of the name of school now. Her undergrad was Loyola. I can't remember the name of the graduate program. But anyway, and I told her, I said, "Miranda, you know, I'm not sure, you know, should I do this?" And she's like, "Daddy, you're going to be fine." She said, "Most people in my class, all of them are over 35, 40. You know, so everybody in her classes were, you know, there wasn't any really, you know, what you would think of as the traditional college student. You go on college campus now, you see a lot of people who are all over the place and stuff. And to those of you who are looking at retirement and thinking about what to do or planning and stuff like that, you know, going back to school is a great thing to do.
Chase those dreams.
You know, chase those dreams. You know,
sure.
Yeah.
And then as we're wrapping up too, Ryan, for folks that want to keep up with you and your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can follow me on social media. Just Google Ronald Young and it'll all come up. You know, my website is roneyoung.com. My Instagram is ron.e.young. And my Facebook page is Ronald Young. But if you just Google Ronald Young artist, it'll come up.
Sounds good to me.
And yeah, and follow me. You know, I this was very good to see that there are people that are reaching out. You know, beside my little small circle of friends. You know, and you got to get your stuff in front of other people because your friends and family will tell you your work is great. Yeah, work is great. That's the best thing going out. Come on, let's do that. Keep doing this. You got to get it in front of the people that really can. And challenge and inspire you, and maybe tell you some hard things that you know you need to work harder on this. Going to school, to me, allows you to get better in that you're surrounding yourself with people who can not only tell you what it is that you need to do to make your work better, okay, but what that looks like. You know, because if everybody around you is just telling, "Oh, work is great. Oh, you're so fantastic. I love you." Yeah.